Did you ever plan to go somewhere only to be disappointed when you got there?
Or not, because it's not.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna have to do that again.
Expectations guide us in so many different circumstances, not just when we plan our travel, but also with our closest relationships and in our careers. But it can be hard to manage these expectations in a realistic way. We tend to struggle with feelings of disappointment when things don't turn out like we planned.
So, in the spirit of our topic, we decided to make our way up to Zagreb's top peak, Stieme. It's going to be our first time riding the cable car, and hopefully we'll get to see some snow.
And we're trying to go with no expectation other than to see what the start of winter looks like on top of Croatia's capital.
Ready?
Let's go.
The truth is that expectations are required for us to function in society. But problems arise when we fail to give the right significance to expectations, such as expecting more or less from others or ourselves than we ought to. It is then that we set ourselves up for disappointment. Certain things might be in our control, while many might not. The idea of expecting things to always turn out the way we imagine highlight other issues, like our tendency to strive for perfectionism or feelings of insecurity or inadequacy. We'll seek external validation to make up for the void we feel inside. The rise of social media in our culture has just reinforced this. What we see on our social feeds is highly edited and filtered. We've even talked about this before in a previous video. The result is that our expectations of places, moments, and people are not entirely tied to reality. Our real-world experience is not what we expected.
So, there's no cars going up. It's closed.
So what do you want to do?
Why don't we just go and take a nice little walk through the trails over there, and maybe we'll find something unexpected.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's go.
Yep. So many of the places we visited and had high expectations for left us feeling somewhat disappointed. Whereas some of our favorite travel memories are of places where we didn't expect anything out of. We just went with the flow and we had so much fun with what we saw.
You could take, for example, our trip to Barcelona. We had no set plan of things to see or do. It just happened to be a cheap flight option as a stopover from Canada to Croatia. And in actuality, it should have been a nightmare for us because we only had 5 days, and usually we like to have more than a month to see a place like that. We were in the process of planning our move to Croatia, and we had 4 suitcases with us. And then when we got there, our Airbnb host was nowhere to be found. And then there was no elevator in the apartment, so we had to carry all those things up. And the place that we booked was a shared a room, a simple room in a shared apartment with a shared bath, which is something that we almost never do. And to top that all off, there was also mass protests going on. So a lot of the famous sites that we wanted to see were closed, like the La Sagrada Basilica.
But do you know what? It was one of our favorite trips to date because we didn't have any expectations of how the experience should be. We enjoyed every minute of the unexpected. Whether in romantic relationships, in friendships, or with family, setting high expectations can lead you to feel constant disappointment. When others close to you don't give you the outcome that you've already imagined in your head, it can lead you to feel sadness, anger, or even resent. If you do something for them and then expect to get the same thing in return, you are denying the reality that not everyone shares your views and not everyone has the same heart as you. But if you do things without expecting anything in return, it'll be easier to deal with the emotions when you don't get back what you think you deserve.
Now, that's not to say that you shouldn't reevaluate relationships when there's a toxic amount of inequality between giving and receiving. As much as people don't like to admit it, relationships are transactional. However, it's important to know the difference between having high and low expectations so that you can manage them in a way that's beneficial to your growth. This can help ease negative experiences when you set high and sometimes unachievable expectations.
Social media is built upon this notion of content input for the hope and expectation of positive feedback output. The more views, likes, or comments we receive, the better we feel about what we've created. We're getting recognition for our work, or, put more simply, validation. It becomes increasingly difficult to keep creating and posting if that positive feedback loop is barely visible, especially if you have high expectations for the content you poured your heart and soul into. But what if we could just make something in the spirit of simply having fun with creating? No expectation of recognition and no need for external validation. Of course, that means there already needs to be an internal source of self-worth. It comes from within, not from the world of social media.
Now, conversely, you could also make a good argument that having high expectations can be helpful in accomplishing our dreams. They can, if managed well, work to boost our confidence. And as a result, our efforts and persistence will increase in order to help us achieve our goals. The reality is that the idea of hope is maintained by expectations before it translates into action. What we expect to happen informs our vision. And if we can envision it, then we can forge a roadmap from where we are now to where we want to be.
On the other hand, if we constantly entertain low expectations, whether from our own thought patterns or from our environmental feedback, it can actually work to block us from pursuing greatness. Our beliefs create a force field of attraction that pulls the very thing we are expecting toward us. So I guess the better question would be, how can we learn to manage a pattern of rational expectations, not based upon delusions, but rooted in the confidence of our abilities? We live in a world highly focused on ambition with a narrow definition of success. So setting high expectations for ourselves and others can come across as admirable and ideal. But often, these high expectations are just a form of trying to control both outcomes and other people. By learning to manage our expectations, we can learn to deal with the results. Instead of being left with feelings of disappointment, we can focus on working on our own intrinsic self-worth, one that is not dependent upon seeking extrinsic validation in order to make us content with our lives. That way, we'll be able to appreciate moments for what they are and as they happen. It's important to remember that a wonderful gift may not be wrapped as you expect, so don't miss it.